Hey Fives folks, today's session, Pam and I, who's in another studio right now, are going to share tips for structuring and executing a split format class. You might call them combo classes, fusion classes, whatever your studio language your studio uses, but anything that involves on the bike and then off the bike. That's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to start off in the cycle room, and then we're going to meet Pam over in the studio. And what we're going to take you through today is Pam's signature combo class called ball and chain. So I'm going to start with the chain part. So let's dive right into it. Number one, start with your objective, just like everything. What is it you're trying to achieve by doing this class? So this could be something that your riders have been asking for, your studio owner is asking for, or is it something that you're seeing your riders need some help with? As Pam and I talked about in our video on what robs riders of performance. So you might look and say, they need a lot of core work, I can see some of this poor form, really need some strength. Build it off the bike, bring it onto the bike, right? So what's your objective? Really think about the objectives of both parts of the class together. They should complement each other, right? So number one, objective. Number two, now that you have your why with your objective, what can you do? And that's going to be driven a lot by logistics, right? What skills do you have, and do you have the right certs for them? You know, just because you have a cycling certification doesn't mean that you should necessarily be off the bike doing small group fitness, right? You want to make sure you have the right certs there. Number two, tools, equipment. What does your gym have? You may actually not have anything that you're going to use, and so you're going to use body weight. You might have TRX, you might have cross-core straps, resistive balls like we're going to use today, stability balls. Whatever it is you have, kettlebells, hand weights, what are you going to use to complement your objective, all right? Third thing, picking up on logistics, preparation, preparation, preparation. As if cycling didn't take enough prep, if you're going to do a combo class, you absolutely have to think through those logistics. What space do you have? Is the studio even available prior to your class? You know, all of these factors you want to think through. Here's why. So for that, number three, for prep, try to get your riders to come in early. Let them know what equipment they need to set up, where they need to set up. They also need to bring the right shoes. Are they going to go barefoot, which is Pam's, she loves doing things barefoot. Do they need sneakers? What is it that they need? They have to come prepared. So ideally, you have a studio or you have enough room in your cycle class, and they have enough time to get set up prior to when class starts. So that's ideal. Okay, so even if you can't get them to be here early, at least let them know, hey, once we transition off the bike, we are hustling out of this room, here's what you're going to need to get set up. So that also implies that you as the instructor also, and I know you guys are always early and ready for your cycle class, but make sure you get here even a little extra early. Just make sure, is all the equipment going to be there for them? So it's really critical, that prep part, because you've probably experienced this, I've experienced this, I've taken those combo classes sometimes, certainly not here, these instructors are awesome, but out in the world, and the prep wasn't there, and it felt chaotic, it felt messy, and it just, I thought, gosh, with just a little more prep, this could have been awesome and really smooth. So, all right, let's jump into the cycle portion. When you do a combo class, you're not just taking a profile that you use and just shortening it. All the standards apply. Just because it's a 20-minute segment or a 30-minute segment, you still, number one, want to have that warm-up. Don't skimp on the warm-up. So a minimum of 5 minutes, 5 to 7. If you're going to do a HIIT class, something high intensity, then you're going to want to do your warm-up for at least 10 minutes. So don't throw all your good training out the window just because you're shortening the class. So, stick with good rules for your warm-up. It's a good time to visit our video on what's in your warm-up. There's my flag. Then you get into the meat of the class. That's going to be 15 to 17 minutes, depending on total time. If you're going 20 minutes on the bike, 20 minutes off the bike, 30-30, 30-15, there's all kinds of combos you can do, right? So hit that, and then you want at least 2 minutes to take your heart rate back down. You're not coming all the way, right? But enough time that all participants can regain their composure, their breath, heart rate comes down, they're ready to get off the bike, get their shoes if they're not already in the other studio, and you want them hustling out of the room into part 2. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to head over to the studio, and Pam's going to take us through the resistance ball part of the ball and chain ride. Hey Pam.
Hi.
So I just took everybody through the first part, the cycle part. We talked about setting an objective. Here's the structure, logistics, what the ride would look like, warm up, transition. Now we'd be bringing folks into this room, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and you are going to wow us with stability ball.
Yes.
All right?
My favorite tool. So let me tell you first of all why I love the ball. This is the most versatile $25 to $30 piece of equipment that you'll ever purchase. I can challenge various levels of fitness easily on this with a dynamic challenge, with a balance challenge, with a resistance challenge. There's so many, options for the ball, and the movements that I'm going to choose are complementary to cycling. So I'm going to take you through. My choices are to challenge balance, to use hip extension. So the joint actions that I'm focusing on are hip extension, back extension or chest expansion, and rotation. So I'm going to choose a variety of movements that go from beginner to intermediate to advanced, just to give you kind of a sampling. So it's going to come at you kind of quick. The key to the ball, though, is understanding the basics, right? The size of the ball makes a huge difference. Basically, between 5 and 6 foot tall, a 55 centimeter ball is a good choice. And 55 centimeters means it's about 21 inches off of the ground from top to bottom. Typically, when they sit on a ball, they're looking for, you want your thighs to be parallel to the floor. It's kind of a, base place to start. Okay, so real quick, when you rally everybody to kind of move into the room, I would first start with a 3-way hip. So I usually have everybody stand, grab the ball. A 3-way hip, it challenges balance, and especially after riding, have them put one foot on top of the ball, and you can be doing this while you're talking, through. So you're standing on one leg, one foot on top of the ball. You're basically walking the ball through a variety of angles. It's called a 3-way hip. It challenges both hip mobility on the side that's moving, obviously, and hip stability on the other side. It's fantastic movement after riding. Tons of core strength involved as well. So I do that on both feet, maybe 20, 30 seconds. And what I'm offering this move for now is this move here, hip extension, which is usually pretty challenging for people. So you want to get the ball, out in front, pretty easy. Diagonal, pretty easy. Off to the side gets a little tricky. When they walk the ball behind, you're truly trying to keep them, keep their torso upright. And notice at the top of my foot on the ball. So I'm really trying to walk it back there to get my thigh behind my hip. So that's called a 3-way hip. Then, for a little rotation, we'll have them come down, low belly on the ball. Whenever you're prone on the ball, it involves core stability or abdominal bracing. Otherwise, it gets pretty nauseating. So I have my low belly on the ball, feet kind of wide, hands together under my chest. And this is called prone spinal rotation. Now, I can let this turn from my feet all the way up, which is really a beautiful move. So you have the balls of your feet on the floor, and notice my whole body is rotating. I'm not only reaching with the top arm, but I'm pressing down with the bottom arm and trying to keep as much length as possible. Now that's sweet, it's awesome, But I'm going to dial this in more to my T-spine. So now I'm going to keep my hips square to the ball and just rotate from the upper body. Same deal, pressing down with the hand that's on the floor and really trying to get that, the rotation through my thoracic spine. It's awesome stuff. So it's challenging to keep the hips square there. I would take that into a lat roll. So once you're down on your belly, walk forward into a plank, typically thighs on top. Spreading fingers nice and wide, you have a strong plank position here. Hug thighs together and feel reaching through your toes. Hands stay still, body stays straight and strong, reaching back as far as you can, and then pull yourself back into plank. Now you could totally do a push-up here if you wanted to, but it's a rolling lat stretch. Nice thing here is it gets arms up overhead, gets all that length in your lats, and it also challenges the glutes, so it's opening the hip, which was one of my objectives, to keep glute engagement, to maintain a nice straight long body. Yeah? So that is rolling lat stretch, and I've just added a push-up. After there, I'm going to suggest playing with a little core strength. So once you come down, first, isometric core strength is down on your back with the ball trapped between your thighs and your forearms and feet up in the air. So this is called dead bug, and a lot of folks are pretty familiar with this. It is much more challenging than it may look on at this point, but if I really press my forearms into the ball and my knees back into the ball, it's an isometric action. Maintaining the natural curve in my low back, so there's a lightness there. And then opposite arm and leg, hello, core, pull away, while I maintain hugging the opposite arm and thigh into the ball. Can you tell I'm shimmying a little bit? Take it maybe one more time. So obviously you can do as many rounds or reps of this as you like, as you feel is appropriate. So it's a great way to fire up some of the core muscles that are definitely going to be involved in almost all of the exercises. Then I would pass the ball to feet. This is kind of a nice, progression from one movement to the next. Now this is for my hip extension and rotation. This is an awesome move. So it's a abduction with bridge and rotation. And notice I don't have my feet on the ball, it's my calves. Okay, my calves are on the top sides of the ball. And I'm not only pushing down in order to lift my hips up, but I'm also hugging my shins or calves toward each other. So I hug the ball, drive down, hips rise up. Arms can be open in T or a little bit closer. The wider your arms, the more assistance. And a little closer here is where I'm going to go, working from my obliques to find that rotation in my lower body. Now a lot of times people will roll the ball. It's not really what you're looking for. I'm trying to steer the ball, like drive the ball, rotating side to side, initiating the movement from my obliques. So I have all this hip extension, scapular stabilization, so it fits all three of my objectives of chest expansion, hip extension, and rotation. It's a fabulous move. And then rolling your spine down. Okay. And I would take the ball, you could do some fun stuff. There's so many partner things, and that's another reason I love the ball. It is just fun. This may look pretty easy for you guys perhaps, not so much for your clients. So you can do a little ball pass. Right? Then I would make my way up with no hands, by the way, which is an excellent mobility drill, just to get down, all the way down, ball overhead, and then all the way back up with no hands. A little harder than it may look. Right, so then there's some options, beginner to intermediate. I'm going to offer this as more intermediate advanced, and it puts together everything that I just talked about. So I'm going to go back to where I started with the three-way hip. And I'll show you from the side so you can have a better view of what I have in mind. This is balance, tons of balance. So I get that foot to go back. And I might work here just a hip hinge. It's perfect, right? So as my leg goes back, Okay, hip hinge, open my arms wide to the side. You could add some dumbbells here if you wanted some strength. What I'm suggesting that we build this move into today is to slide the leg back, bring your hands down to either side of your, the front foot, hop back, do a little push-up, hop back in, and stand up. It's like a single leg burpee. It fulfills a ton of core strength, hip extension, upper body strength. Reaching, hands, hop, press, snap that foot back in, really healthy hip hinging, and then pull the ball in. If you want to get saucy, you could stretch it back, hands down, hop back, lift the leg, do your push-up, snap the foot back in, and stand up tall. So you can work that on the other side as well. Any blend. So if someone can't quite get down, they would be working, get their hands to the floor, they could work just the hip extension. And that's really, again, a really healthy movement. And then they could start to fold. Again, you could add dumbbells, you could reach your arms straight out in front. You could just work this, just the start to lower. So that's more of a suggestion for a more advanced movement. Now I want to go back to a more beginner exercise because this is one that almost everyone does on the ball. It's a ball curl. They call it a crunch, but honestly, in my opinion, there is nothing in your body that wants to be crunched. This is a curl, so it's spinal flexion, but it's really small. So here's the way I would cue the ball curl, an ab curl on the ball. This is called supine incline, which, by the way, this is an exercise. And it's pretty scary for a lot of folks to come from seated to walking forward. It's called a walking transition. And they want to own that because they're transitioning their body weight back onto the ball while they walk their feet forward, and then they walk back up. So you'll see that can be a little tricky and scary for a lot of folks. Train them to do that first, to get down into the supine incline, hands go behind their head. Now here, it's challenging for folks to relax their neck. So this is an ab curl, not a neck curl. When their hands are behind their head, I usually encourage like a cradle and let the weight of your head rest in your hands. Your elbows are in your periphery, so you can just see them, sneaking outside of your eyes. Anchor your low back into the mat. Your low back does not move. This angle at your hip does not change. So once you're here, boom, you're here. You lock it in. And then curl basically your torso, lifting and lowering. So a lot of times this is what, it's like over-exaggerated. When I anchor the low back into the mat, into the ball, and curl forward, you don't need a ton of these, and it's not a big range of motion. Now, as I mentioned, there's a stability challenge. Your feet can be wide to start, and it's perfect. It's an excellent strength exercise. As you start to challenge the balance, feet can come in closer, and they can continue to curl. And then it would even be more challenging to extend one leg. And then perhaps you could go to the opposite arm. But it doesn't need to be this big movement, right? So an ab curl done well, don't need a ton, don't need a big range of motion. And really work on cueing that works for all fitness levels. Hope this is helpful. Stay awesome.